2.
Hey everyone, welcome to Geeksvana Live. It's great to see you all. Thank you very much for coming in and joining us. Just checking that my audio is on. Yes, it is. I always like to do that now. Hence we have the little audio muted custom emoji for our members in the chat, because I always forget to do something. I always forget to do something. First off, I want to thank everyone, as I said, for being here. We'll go through some of the chat in a couple of minutes. But I also wanted to thank you as well, because we had to move the stream a couple of times. We've also had to move one of our members' meets as well. I've been a little bit below the weather. Below the weather? Is that, Stephen, is that a very British term?
It is. It's only a British term, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I've been a bit unwell recently since the middle of last week. Hence, there was only one video from me last weekend, this stream moving a couple of times. So apologies there. This is a stream that I've really been looking forward to, and a conversation I've really been looking forward to start with everybody. Just say hi to a few people in the chat very quickly. Peter Campbell, good to see you, sir. One of our channel members. El Smeghead, our senior moderator. Andy Keast, hello, sir. Yes, Andy, I am feeling a lot better. Thank you. I'm probably 70% there. So I was very lucky to have my my second jab on Friday, which was in the middle of where I was already feeling unwell. So I thought, you know, if I get the jab and I get some side effects, at least I get it all out of the way at once, which is awesome. Travels with Rosie says, below the weather, remaining in VLOS. There you go. See what you did there. Yeah, well, I didn't actually mean it, but there you go. You mean under the weather. Yes, I know. But hey, that shows how under the weather I am. Kovac Geography, Chuck, good to see you. Fish Diaries, hi. Johnny Mack, good to see you as well. Matt Preston, and all the usual suspects. It's really great to see you all. I was interested to see who we would get on a Sunday evening as well. This feels a little bit strange. Kind of feels like being at school at the weekends. I don't often stream or even put videos out at the weekend very much. So it all feels a little bit strange, actually, to be here. Now, today we're going to be talking about a subject which is going to be covered in a decent amount over the next few weeks on Geeksvana. Obviously, we talk about the UK drone rules a lot on Geeksvana, have the UK drone rules series, which is very popular. Thank you to anyone who has become a subscriber because of that series. It's helped grow the channel an awful lot, and I really appreciate all of the kind feedback that we get on those videos. Really, the idea behind that video series was from my own growth as a hobbyist. I wanted to find out where I could fly. I wanted to ask questions and get answers as to what's legal, what isn't legal, that type of thing. And it was very difficult to find out that kind of information. So hence it became a video series on my channel once I started to do this, basically, to do YouTube. So I really appreciate it. And visual line of sight is, of course, one of the rules, one of the regulations that covers the UK, but it also, of course, covers most other countries that have regulations on drones as well. I say most. So it is also an opportunity to bring the rest of the world in on a conversation. Over the next few weeks, we've got interviews with EMS helicopter pilots, emergency helicopter pilots, with fixed wing pilots, general manned aviation pilots. And it will all build up towards a live debate about visual line of sight and about the different levels and aspects of it, both from hobbyists to the professional side of things, and the whole future of perhaps beyond visual line of sight flying for all of those areas of the drone hobby and enterprise level as well. So we have a live debate with people on both sides of the fence, and you know, everybody. There are, of course, those people with feet on both sides of the fence that perhaps think we could have some beyond visual line of sight flying, which could be safe even as hobbyists. One thing I would like to say is that whilst we have this particular debate on the channel, it is a debate. Everyone's views are welcome. So please, let's not attack each other and that type of thing. We're all here to make friends. And, you know, we all love the hobby and all want to protect the hobby and have that hobby last for many, many years, frankly. So tonight I'm going to be joined, as you already heard him in the background, trying to confirm my terrible puns and use of the British language. Yes, hello. There he is. Let's bring him in. It's Stephen. Look, I pointed the right way. My orientations are okay tonight, at least.
Yes, you are there.
Yeah.
You're there.
I'm over here.
I'm there. You're over there. You're over there.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. Yeah, things are busy. You know, things are very, very busy. So, but yeah, it's nice to be out on a Sunday night. It feels like a school night.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's very strange because obviously we all have our now. I also want to say hi to Andrew. He's probably watching. Who Andrew McQuillan, who is the third of the three amigos, who obviously regularly live streams with us. He is also under the weather, feeling unwell. We haven't been kissing. We didn't give it to each other or anything else like that. We have the.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, indeed, but we haven't been. We have water between us. We're not even on the same mainland. And yeah, he actually has a problem with his throat tonight as well, which obviously it's very sore, etc. So there's not much point being a YouTuber when you can't talk, is there really? So.
Although actually, it would be great to have him on just so he would shut up. That would be great, actually.
Oh. Now you've started something, but we all generally have our little build-up session. We all sort of G each other up in our group chat and that type of thing, and which we're very used to doing on a Thursday when we're out doing our other jobs, etc., and that type of thing. And it's been a bit strange doing that over the weekend, isn't it? Sort of like, oh, hang on, we're streaming tonight. Oh yeah, okay, we're streaming. It does feel like being in the school building at that school holidays.
It does.
Indeed. So, So how are things for the flyby guys at the moment?
Well, we are quite busy. I'm just getting ready to go on our next travels. I'll be away from next week. I'll be here for the whole week, and then a week today I'll be traveling to Africa.
Oh,
yes, I'm traveling to Africa, which will be quite exciting.
Yes. What are you doing in Africa?
Well, I can't. You know, I cannot say on the air. You know, I can't say on the air.
I love asking you though. Whenever it's the same as Dubai. It's sort of like the first thing I'm going to ask you is what are you doing there? What are you doing? What are you doing? Yes.
But I'm very sure at some point when I finish there, you know, it will be very apparent what I've been doing there.
Okay.
Because I think it will be.
Will you be flying drones?
Yes.
Okay. Will you tell us what kind of drone you're flying?
No, but I'm taking a Mini 2 with me. I'm taking a Mini 2 with me.
There you go, a Mini 2, yes. So you're going to Africa, you're going to fly a Mini 2, and we'll all know what you did after you've done it. I'm getting quite concerned now, actually.
I'm not sure you subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, that's it. If you're new here, subscribe.
I'm going to be sending you some content, though. I said to you, I'm going to send you some content to update you when I'm away,
awesome.
Because I know you'll be missing me. The audience will be missing me. So just to keep you updated.
Always missing you. Just very quickly, thank you to the Mojek for your £10 super chat just before we started the show. He said he'll be sleeping soon, as up about 4 a.m. and we'll watch the replay. Have a great live stream, all and thank you for that. Thanks for your direct support of the channel there, and but also thank you for coming back and watching the replay when you do, and to everybody else that watches the replay, which I know we get a lot of replays after the event actually, and I really appreciate that. So thank you guys. From the bottom of my heart, it means an awful lot to me. So we're going to be talking about visual line of sight tonight, aren't we? Which is an interesting and exciting
and controversial.
And yeah, potentially controversial. I think it's one that I think we all know that, you know, it's something that it sounds exciting if somebody says, you know, I'm going to fly my drone beyond visual line of sight. If there was a safe way to do it, I would love to fly my drone, you know, 5 miles away, and you know, do a big long sort of live stream of it flying across all the city landscape and the countryside and everything else like that. You know, there is to us sort of aviation enthusiasts, etc. There is a natural appeal to it, isn't there? It's something that we think, you know, that would be cool.
Yeah. But there's also a realistic side to that as well. And that is, you know, although your drone can essentially fly beyond visual line of sight, yes, but there is a huge risk that your drone will fail once you get there because of the radio signal, because not understanding the terrain, not understanding radio frequencies, things like that. I mean, you know, we have seen obviously that people have been flying beyond visual line of sight. And to be honest with you, they've been lucky. They have been very, very lucky, because depending on where you are, depending on your geography, depending, yes, on the type of rock, yes, that is built and all the houses that are around you, trees and whatnot, that can have a massive effect on your radio signal. It can.
Yeah, exactly. And it, you know, there are inherent dangers, there are issues, and you know, no one's trying to suggest that, you know, a Mini 2, you know, coming into contact with anything else is going to cause significant injury to anyone or anything else like that. But there are other issues, which again, hopefully we can talk about and debate and learn more about as this debate goes on the channel. Just going back on in the chat to look at a couple of the different things that people have been raising. El Smeghead says, I now see flying beyond visual line of sight as the drone equivalent of speeding. It's not permitted, it's socially unacceptable, can be dangerous, but you'll always get a few that don't care about the consequences. And that's an interesting one, actually, isn't it? Because, you know, there has been a very big push here in the UK to sort of, you know, I remember reading an article a while ago now from the Police Federation saying they wanted to make speeding the new smoking, like it's something that people just don't want you to do, basically. And, you know, I found that an interesting sort of tactic to take. And, you know, people speeding in their car, you know, I often hear the term, everyone's been beyond visual line of sight with their drone at some point. Personally, actually, I haven't. But you know, I can't say the same for me driving in my car. Have I always stuck to the speed limit? No. So it's an interesting point to raise for sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think at the same time with cars, you know, even if you're speeding, you still have. You still have the vision, you can still see around you, you can still slow down.
Yeah, your situational awareness is there, isn't it? So
whereas when you're flying, to go beyond visual line of sight, you don't have that. And of course, this is something that you're going to go into with a few other shows that are coming in the future in the next few weeks, which is really important. And we need to have these discussions, and we need to talk with these people so that the public are informed and see it from a different point of view rather than their point of view.
It's really, you know, whenever I prepare a video on the UK drone rules, especially because obviously, you know, it's the country I live in, it's the rules I fly under, so therefore I do a reasonable amount of videos on them for that reason. I always try and attempt to stay away from telling people what to do, if that makes sense. From the point of view that, you know, I'm just a private citizen, an individual. I'm, you know, but people, both sides of the fence, people that actually intend on breaking the rules and those that want to follow them, they also want to know the rules. So I try to give the information completely, and that's what I want this debate to be over the next few weeks on Geeksvana is to have this visual line of sight debate and have it cleanly from the point of view that let's talk about the facts surrounding it and not necessarily the hype either way, frankly. And then hopefully people walk away with more information. Travels with Rosie says, she's just going to throw this up here. I know it's silly, but I wish the unaided VLOS rule was more specific. We all wear glasses now. Yes, indeed. And without the aid of them, we can see the Mini 2 about 10 meters away. I wish I could get changed to no magnified viewing aid. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly glasses are allowed, that type of thing, but obviously it's what they don't want you to do is to be using binoculars or having a large screen with a giant zoom camera to be able to still see that. You know, it needs to be you in your normal sort of daily setup, being able to see the drone. Basically, that's certainly what they're looking for there. And indeed, El Smeghead says exactly what I was saying before, that we've all done it at some point, usually as excited noobs, indeed, to see how far it will go. He lost sight of his Phantom 4 at 100 feet. Out once, looked down to adjust the settings, and it was gone. And that's an interesting one as well, because I found that very much as a new hobbyist, that, you know, the drone sort of being there, then me looking down and then looking back up to a grey sky with a especially now with their grey drones, and you're looking up and it takes you a few seconds to get it. One differential that I think is important here, that to keep, and this is my opinion and my interpretation of the rules, especially here in the UK. Visual line of sight doesn't actually mean you can see the drone at all times. It means that it is within visual line of sight. So, because of course, you know, as I found out on my GVC flight test, I also need to be scanning the airspace for other air users, and you know, with our wonderful channel sponsor, Drone Masterclass, the link in the description to their A2 CofC and GVC courses, to get a little link in for our show sponsor there.
Get it in.
Indeed. I was taught during that course to make sure that I'm scanning in sections and to scan in a circle to make sure that I'm aware of what's going on. So I'm not always, the drone's always in my periphery vision when I'm doing that. But again, when I'm looking at my screen to make settings adjustments and check things are all safe, etc. on screen, with my telemetry, I am looking away from it. So I think that the general rule of thumb is 80-20, that you should be looking at the drone 80% of the time, and then checking the airspace and looking at the controller the other 20% of the time. So it's interesting, but it's something you have to get used to as a hobbyist. And that's why I really enjoyed the fact that a lot of my first flights, my first couple of years of flying, was done at a BMFA flying field from the point of view that I was in a safer environment for anything to go wrong, as it were. I was in an airspace that has the planning for that to happen, basically. So it was good. So, but thank you for raising those points, people. I really appreciate it. I'm just scanning down through just to make sure there's nothing else that was raised. And as the Mojek says, Geeksvana, you mean under the weather? Yes. I do get my words twisted sometimes, which is strange, isn't it, for a YouTuber?
Wasn't it the GMI Visuals who was in the chat?
Yes,
who was really contributing, a lot. Wasn't this the same person who was giving a lot of topics last time we were talking about?
Yes, when this came up in the last live show that we were going to be raising this, etc. It did come up a few times with GMI. Right. And hi, good to see you as well.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Yes, and one other question here. Andy Keast is asking, does having a loom cube or similar justify visual line of sight if you can see the flash but not the drone? Well, this is an interesting one, actually, because I made a video, and it's completely made. It's 80% edited, and it was actually about increasing visual line of sight, which obviously, if I was to put out a video that says, I know how to increase your daytime visual line of sight, you would hope a few people are going to click on that and it's going to get views, etc. I kind of feel like I defeated my own point, as it were. The point was that I felt with a decent strobe, either a Cree strobe or a loom cube, like Andy's saying, that with that flashing, obviously you can see the drone. How I found that it helped was orientation, because I had it on the back of the drone, so that I was able to tell more, as it became more of an object in the sky rather than necessarily, a distinguishable, especially things like the Mini 2, distinguishable drone. I was able to tell which way the drone was going, so it helped from that point of view. But really, it's all about situational awareness, and I think visual line of sight is also an interesting one because there is an individual aspect to it. So I cannot say to you, you are safe to fly your Mini 2 at 300 meters, or you're safe to fly your Phantom 4 or my Inspire 1 at 500 meters, because it does depend on each individual person. It depends on their eyesight, of course, depends on the size of the drone, the weather, and it also depends on your individual capability to assess the situational awareness and actually what's going on with the drone. Some people are just better at that than others, basically. So that's where the word safe comes into it more, doesn't it? It's sort of safe visual line of sight.
And I'm not sure where the legislation lies now with that, but certainly before the legislation came in, I was involved in one project which was linked with a military project in the UK, where we were flying I think it was actually a 20 kilo drone here, and we were carrying a 15 kilo payload, and we were flying it 1 kilometer away, and we actually had permission to fly at VLOS. So we were talking about the tower and everything, it was fine. But even even there was a strobe on the drone, and it flew 1 kilometer away. And even still, even when you seen the strobe, the weather wasn't particularly great. I mean, it wasn't sunny, but it was grey. It wasn't raining. All this stuff really comes into play because you're still not seeing, and also, how are you sure that you're still seeing your drone and you're not seeing an aircraft? This is another, because when you see something flashing, it doesn't necessarily mean it's your drone.
Yes,
it could also be an aircraft.
I certainly think once you've got that far, in my personal opinion, you are beyond visual line of sight, because again, because you can see a dot and that's my drone. You've got no idea what's happening around that in the airspace. You can't scan the airspace around that drone. GMI Visuals is asking or stating, my hope is that sub 250 gram drones be allowed to fly legally beyond visual line of sight in rural areas, so open up the countryside, obeying the legal ceiling. And he then follows up by asking what consequences when flying a sub 250. Well, certainly from the consequences side of things, it's the same as if you're flying a Mini 2. It's the same as if you're flying an Inspire 2. It is a drone in the UK airspace, so you can expect it to. The consequences are exactly the same. You are breaking the law. It all depends on obviously what happens from that as well. It isn't sort of like, oh, here's a £50 speeding ticket for flying beyond visual line of sight. It depends what happens in terms of the danger and everything else like that. So, and I can understand as I was saying at the beginning, I understand the desire as a photographer. If there was a legal way of me doing it, I would love to fly my Mini 2 3 miles away and capture that whole flight and everything else. That would be fantastic. We could get some really unique footage. But I also understand the reasons why it isn't legal. But yes, no, the implications for sub 250 are exactly the same for beyond visual line of sight.
I think also at the same time, what GMI Visuals is saying there is, that the sub 250, the risks are so small. But even if the risks are so small, they will still take that as a risk. It doesn't matter how small it will still be a risk.
That's right. One of my issues in terms of beyond visual line of sight in the current formats. So if we can find a way for us to fly our Mini 2s, our Air 2Ss, etc., safely beyond visual line of sight, and we can get that cleared by the regulator, and and we get permission to do it under certain corridors, under certain circumstances, great. I'm all for it. If we can get a law change, then great. The issue is, of course, I don't think we're ever going to get that law change just as a willy-nilly, fly beyond visual line of sight in the countryside or wherever you deem it safe. Because no matter the size of the drone, no matter the size of the aircraft, if another manned aircraft comes across that drone, it has to take action. That manned pilot has a legal responsibility to keep his aircraft safe and everything else like that. And my issue is, as I was saying last time we discussed this, what happens if there is an EMS helicopter? What happens if there is a military helicopter, a police helicopter on a mission, that type of thing? You also don't know when you're flying beyond visual line of sight. Like, and GMI, I'm not pulling you into this at all, because I know for a fact that you're talking about sub 250 over rural areas, and so I understand that. But when I do see on YouTube flights over town centres, going across the whole of Brighton or something, and I think about a 3 mile, 4 mile area, and I think about the number of potential manned and unmanned conflicts that could come up during that flight, it frankly makes me shiver slightly, because it really is a bit of a scary thing, because you could be coming across EMS helicopters, that type of thing, but you could also be coming across police drones and search and rescue drones, that type of thing. There's so many other air users, and they're all, of course, having to react to your drone or to that drone being beyond visual line of sight. Because
some of them may not even see it. Some of them may not even be aware of that. Of course, and that makes it even worse. So because that's not what they're looking for. They're more concentrated on the mission that they're doing.
Yes.
So there's a very good chance. But I think at the same time as well, there's probably quite a few people who have been flying for quite a few years. So when we have been flying, let's say 4, 5, maybe even 6 years, the amount of drones that were in the sky 5 or 6 years ago compared to the amount of drones that are in the sky now are completely different.
Yes.
And they will continue to be it will rise.
And that's the thing. That is the thing. Yeah, exactly. The rise of the commercial enterprise drone. Last year when I was on live streams, I was trying to explain to people that actually the reason the hobby will potentially come last when it comes to regulation, etc., in the future, is because it's a tiny part of the pie as far as the drone market in the future. Which is why now when you see things like Skydio and other drone manufacturers coming out with the blue Suez drones, that type of thing, there is a lot of companies focusing on purely the enterprise end of the marketplace, because that's where they see the biggest growth. And it's going to be very interesting. TC Aerial Photography raised a point about what can happen if you fly beyond visual line of sight using the app waypoints and it crashes due to a software error. Is that whose fault is that? The app devs or the pilot? And I know Elsmega did answer you, and you carried on chatting in the chat about it. But yes, it is very much the fault of the pilot. If your drone goes beyond visual line of sight without permission, then yes. However, one thing you then raise, when you say that in rural areas, farmlands, they should allow beyond visual line of sight as there's minimal risk to others, that's something that, in my opinion, we could see happen. Especially with farmland and that type of thing, because again, you're going to be able to set a NOTAM for that area. You're going to be able to say there is a beyond visual line of sight drone making inspections up and down these fields. And so, in my opinion, once UTM's here, once we have unified traffic management, and the air traffic controllers are able to call up even what a hobbyist drone is doing, etc., then I think we could start to see that kind of thing. But again, it will be planned and it will be with permission. There will be a certain type of drone flown with a certain type of software, doing a certain type of mission with a NOTAM in place and everything else like that. So
what we're getting into there is, you really are getting into aviation,
yes,
which is what we should be getting into anyway. But it should be that if at some point, I think that there's a possibility that we will be, but you will have to, as you say, you will have to have a NOTAM.
Yes.
So if you have a NOTAM, anyone who's flying in that area will know about you. They will know that you're flying in the area, and it's as simple as that. So the better the communication and the better the understanding of the aviation side, the more it will, the more that it will actually benefit you.
We both scratched our head then at the same time.
So.
So someone out there somewhere is recording this and using it as an example of what you call it, reactionary body language. Of the fact that you went like that and I went like that as well, which. And they'll say, here the host is trying to support the guest and support his co-host by mimicking. Either that, or they'll just say, I'm basically a gorilla, and I'm just doing what gorillas do. You got that to a gorilla, and he goes like that, But anyway, sorry, I took you off your point there.
The Mojek has just come up with a good one here as well, actually. So, what's the rule if you have a visual observer at a remote location? And that is a good point, because you can have this extended visual line of sight by using. And I've been using visual observers before, and quite a few different projects, and again, they have to, it has to be allowed, so it has to be agreed with the authorities. So it's much the same as having a NOTAM. So if you're flying using visual observers, the authorities have to know that you have a visual observer, and also where they will be, and you have to have. You have to have contact with them. So they have to let you know that they can see the drone. They can still see the drone when it's above them, and they can see it and it's gone far. Yes, but those things have to be agreed. So it's not a case of that you can fly and just have a visual observer. It has to be agreed with the authorities that you're doing that kind of mission and having visual observers.
From the UK CAA point of view, reading their readout on this, beyond visual line of sight of the remote pilot, if the remote pilot is unable to maintain direct aided visual contact with the unmanned aircraft while it is airborne, then an alternative method of collision avoidance must be employed in order to ensure that it can still be flown safely. VLOS flights will normally require either a technical capability which is equivalent to the method the pilot of a manned aircraft uses to see and avoid potential collisions. This is referred to detect and avoid capability, or DAA. A block of airspace to operate in, which, as we're saying, with NOTAMs, etc., which the unmanned aircraft is segregated from other aircrafts, because other aircraft are not permitted to enter that airspace block. The unmanned aircraft can operate without the risk of collision or need for other collision avoidance capabilities, or clear evidence that the intended operation will have no aviation threat. and those 3 words are in inverted commas, and that the safety of persons and objects on the ground has been properly addressed. So to go beyond the visual line of sight of the remote pilot, you still have to tick a lot of boxes. You still have to make sure it's safe. The one that's always thrown at me, it's thrown at me all through the different training courses that I've taken for drone use, and in any debate that I have off camera with many of the industry professionals that I talk to, is Article 241 here in the UK, which is to ensure that you do not recklessly endanger people, property, and everything else like that whilst conducting operations with your drone. And that very much is, with beyond visual line of sight, one of the things that you have to bear in mind, that it has to be safe, frankly. That is the actual readout from the CAA's website as far as beyond visual line of sight is concerned. And there is due to be, I believe, some add-ons to the GVC. That would have been one for Andrew to answer, to allow beyond visual line of sight, but I know that is still a ways off yet. But yeah, a really great point to raise, and a really interesting one, because again, I don't know if I had somebody that was a visual light observer that was perhaps, stood 500 meters away from me with a radio. I was in constant contact with them on their headsets. Does that give me detect and avoid capabilities? I don't know.
No,
I don't know, because
it's because they at the end of the day, the pilot in command has to make a decision.
Yes.
About what's happening in the airspace. So your visual observer can say, we work in codes. So we always have code 1, code 2, code 3, code 4, code 5, and we have got different meanings for all those codes. And when we have visual observers, we will train them to understand what those codes are, so that we don't want to have people listening in on radios and saying, oh, there's a plane coming in and you could have a crash. That just creates panic.
Yes.
So we will always work in codes. So the visual observer will say code 1 from the east, code 2 in the area or something, and that just gives the pilot in command enough information to make a decision based on that information, and he or she will then say, I will land all, or bring it back or something, but it's it won't stop an accident. It will only just give the pilot in command that one piece of information to make a decision, because
absolutely,
a visual observer should never say land it, because that's not his or her decision. It's the pilot in command. And again, we must understand that the person flying the drone is the pilot in command. They are the one making the decision. They are the one that is irresponsible. The visual observer is not.
Yes, exactly. Just one point which is slightly off subject, but it is one that I would like to answer very quickly. Ellis Mean brought up that he's heard that DJI aren't even making C-Mark drones yet, and he heard that they confirmed it. I can 100% confirm that they wouldn't be making C-Class drones yet, because in fact the C labeling system for them to be based on, certainly here in the UK, doesn't actually technically exist yet. It hasn't been confirmed by the Department of Transport. Department for Transport, DFT. So it isn't something which is in existence yet. They have confirmed that they feel that as of the EASA ones, which hopefully the UK will mirror from the point of view of being able to get some cool drones quicker, frankly, they have said they feel that a lot of their drones already fit those requirements. So when it happens, they feel that it should be smooth, potentially even some retroactive labeling, certainly on the enterprise drones.
Yep.
But yes, but absolutely, they're actually not making them yet, because the label system isn't there yet. So and it's going to be interesting going into, if we did a video with Andrew actually on this, and we were discussing that we felt that we should get at least confirmation on the labels quite soon, because otherwise we're going to start tripping into next year, and then we're only going to have 12 months of the legacy period left, and everyone's going to be left with these drones and an A2 CofC qualification without being able to do anything with them. So hopefully it will get sorted out quite soon. We'll have to wait and see. So yes, and I saw another one here which I wanted to answer actually. I want to answer everybody, of course, but there's another one that popped up. The Mojek. At Geeksvana, if beyond visual line of sight was permitted, would a live feed from a 360 cam be sufficient? He doesn't think so, but he'd like your thoughts. And that raised sort of two subjects with me. I agree with you, the Mojek, that actually I don't think that would be sufficient either. And it's a little bit, it's an interesting point, because my first flight with goggles, which was my first flight with the DJI FPV drone, and in that video, I said it in the live stream afterwards, I was surprised how much situational awareness the goggles gave me from the point of view of where the drone is and that type of thing. Now, it isn't the same as a pilot sat on a flight deck, because of course a pilot sat on a flight deck can look out of all of his windows, and there is, no matter how good the video feeds and no matter how observant you are of that video feed, there is something that is different. If I was sat at home and I was watching a video feed of this room and I had a 360 camera in this room, there is still information that me being sat here would give me, and just the way the human brain works and everything else like that, about actually being in the situation, that would tell you more, frankly. So the situational awareness thing is ultimately about what you can see and where you are, which is why visual line of sight rules are in place, because of course it's, that drone is within your situational awareness, that's within your physical area. So you're able to know what's going on with it. And so yeah, it's an interesting one though, because as far as what will be there, it's more what I think we're going to see from certainly in the short term with being beyond visual line of sight, is we're going to see corridors and we're going to see setups from the point of view of closing airspace. And I think that's the only way it's going to happen, so that a NOTAM can be put in place to say up to 400 feet in this area, in this corridor, and it will be drawn along the drone assist map, etc. And sectional maps, etc. from the point of view of the NOTAM being put in place, in whatever shape that particular area is, that they're allowed to go beyond visual line of sight in their flying, probably enterprise level missions, because they've closed that airspace basically. And that's the only, because again, on that CAA website mention, they talked about removing the risk. It wasn't minimizing risk to other aircraft, it's removing aviation threat. And that's impossible. That's impossible unless you can guarantee no other aircraft are going to be there. Again, you still can't guarantee it, but putting a NOTAM in place, at least it's not your fault if other aircraft come into that space.
I think that I think that going down the UTM route, I think you're probably going to have you on, Sternberry, on the show when you're having this discussion as well. So I mean, he knows very much about that, and he can give some very, very good advice and very, very good tips about the possibilities in the future. I think that would be a way to go. So something similar to that we can fly. But if we the hobbyists continue to behave, and I say we because this also includes me as well, because I am also a hobbyist, if we continue to behave in such a manner that we'll just keep getting on the backs of the authorities, they will just shut us down. They will shut down the hobby. They will shut it down, and I hope that never happens. I hope I'm sounding over dramatic, but if this keeps going on, they will just shut us down.
Yeah, I think when I look at that side of things, and I hear people saying, they don't want the hobby, they want to close the hobby down. And I hear this across the world, not obviously not just in the UK, that regulation is becoming harder and is becoming tighter and tighter, and it is something that they don't want. They don't want us. They would rather not have the hobby around. I don't know whether or not that's necessarily the case, only because if I were the regulator and I didn't want hobbyist drones, I feel like there's enough information out there, enough content on YouTube and everything else like that, that actually you could say, look, this is not a responsible hobby, and you could throw all that up. Obviously, we in the hobby, we all know the thousands and thousands of man hours that are happening every month that are perfectly safe. People within visual line of sight, decades of model hobbying, etc. So I'm not for a minute suggesting it is an irresponsible or dangerous hobby, but I don't necessarily think the appetite is necessarily there for the hobby to be removed. But what I think we have is a situation where the technology overtook regulators and overtook their understanding. And for a while now, they've essentially been playing catch up. And when you're playing catch up to an ever advancing technological field, it's always going to have that bit of lag, and you're always going to feel like the regulator's chasing you. the sub 250 gram market, for instance, that the UK freedom with sub 250 gram drones was after, of course, the Mavic Mini came into production. So it's not even as if they said 250 gram drones because we'll never get anything decent under that. They actually did that knowing we had these little drones that could fly quite far and could get 4K capabilities, etc., and that type of thing in existence. So I think there's a lot of good work happening in the regulations space as well. True. And we just need to be responsible as a hobby, and also, of course, stand up for our rights as well. But that's why I want to have this debate and have this discussion on the channel over the next few weeks, because I think it's important that we need to allow the conversations to happen, if that makes sense. And that's one of the other things that I don't like. So, for instance, I'm not necessarily meaning the people who make flights beyond visual line of sight and put them on YouTube shouldn't be punished, etc., because I think actually they should, and you should not be putting beyond visual line of sight. If you care about the hobby at all, you should not be putting those on YouTube. 100%. That is, I will certainly stake my position on that. But I still want to have those voices in the debate. I still want to have that conversation, because just because I have a certain viewpoint doesn't mean it's, if we all lived life just on our own viewpoint, we would never have, consensus, rule of law. It would be a very scary world. So, I want to have that conversation, because who knows, you could have that conversation in a wider aspect. Regulators could have this conversation with the hobby and with industry, and you may find safe ways to fly beyond visual line of sight as a hobbyist.
Because I think that happen. I think, and that's why it's good to have this discussion. It's good to have good people to come in to have that discussion with people who understand the regulation, who understand where the industry, where the environment is here. It's very, very important that we have that discussion. But if you have someone who flies and literally does not care about the community, doesn't care, I wouldn't want to promote. And that's where I would draw the line in a sense. So
there are people.
So I think having having on GMI drones, sorry, I forget
visuals.
GMI visuals. Sorry, please excuse me. I think the GMI visuals would be a perfect person to come on the show and talk about this, Faye, because he or she, I don't know if it's a he or she, is having all these comments on there, and it seems a bit unfair because he or she is quite maybe sort of frustrated. But that person has a lot to say. That would be a really, really good example of that person coming on the show with experts and putting their point. When
we do come to the actual live debate, which was in about a month's time, maybe 5 weeks actually, because we do have a few videos and a few other bits to build towards it so that everyone's got the information. There are going to be proponents of beyond visual line of sight flying in the hobby present in that live debate, so we're going to have every single angle covered. But it is important that we're able to talk about this and be able to say, well, very much like sorry GMI visuals, we keep using you as an example, and he's actually put he in there. He.
Good. Don't want to offend. Indeed. Jason. Okay, Jason. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. I always appreciate that, and that's one of the things that I know some channels react when they get comments that are, they'll put a video out and someone will say, "Hey, I think you're talking BS." And I think this opinion and what do you know and that type of thing. I actually love those kind of comments. Honestly, I love that kind of feedback. I enjoy debate. I love having discussions with people. And for instance, some of my FPV viewers have taught me an awful lot about the hobby side of things and some of the individual frustrations that they have within the hobby as well. And it's made me a more rounded individual within the hobby and within drones, full stop. So I welcome it, and it just because someone has a different viewpoint to me, I'm actually happier sometimes speaking to those people than the people that agree with me, which is why we have Andrew around.
Yes, of course. It always helps to have Andrew around, Although he's quiet tonight, he's not even in the chat. He must be really sick. He must be sick as hell, He must be, because
he isn't even messaging me to tell me how many things I'm getting wrong.
Well, that's it. The WhatsApp group's quiet tonight.
Yes, indeed. Well, I know he's got a hectic couple of weeks coming up, so hopefully he's getting himself off to bed and with a Lemsip. Lemsip. What a British brand. I'm being very sort of English and British today, aren't I, with my sayings and my branding. So, okay, let's talk about another subject, which actually is an interesting one for us to talk about, and we are going to have some people on that specialise in FPV in the coming weeks, as I keep saying. But I want to make sure that we're not just closing off the debate this evening. But the next part of the subject matter, and it's one that I have a bit more experience in now, which is actually FPV goggles. Visual line of sight, and the whole reason, the whole need, etc., to have a spotter for situational awareness and sterile areas. I've got a video coming up hopefully this week. Obviously my production list has been put back a little bit because of being unwell for a few days, and I have to catch up with my day job as well as my YouTube job, and pay the bills.
Pay the bills.
No, I do not pay my bills this month because I have YouTube videos to make. Thank you very much. Back off, but they don't take that as a reason, Stephen. But there we go.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Indeed. But I have one coming up. Actually, the Simon Dale, the people over at FPV UK, have actually managed to get a revised Article 16 authorization created specifically for their members. So rather than before it was for BMFA, the Scottish one. I've got a Scottish guy on, and I don't even know the name of the Scottish membership, and FPV UK. This one was just for FPV UK, and it's actually enhanced and improved some of the abilities for FPV UK members to be able to fly. It's identified the type of aircraft that can be used better and what can happen. So whereas before you couldn't even have things like follow me mode on and that type of thing, you can now have panorama mode and that type of thing. So which is safer, frankly. It's if someone's used to flying with those modes on, it's safer that they can continue to do that under the Article 16. Again, it's just for recreational use, not for commercial flying, of course. So that's great. But the FPV goggle thing was something that interests me because I am now getting fairly decent with the FPV drone. This is the DJI FPV drone. This is not Geeksvana. Welcome to Geeksvana FPV. Yeah. Am I even holding the right thing? Am I even holding the right fingers up? I don't know.
I just do that. So
okay. Welcome to Geeksvana FPV. So I'm not saying I'm FPV. I'm flying the DJI FPV drone, which I realise to a lot of my audience doesn't count me as an FPV pilot. So, but I am wearing the goggles, which is what I mean. So from a situational awareness point of view, from an environmental point of view, I am looking at the amazing HD signal on the goggles, and that's how I'm flying. Now, there is this thing that I have that. With the FPV community, we ask them to follow obviously the same rules that we all follow because they are, flying an aircraft. This is aviation, it's unmanned aviation, and we all have to follow the same set of rules, which makes sense, of course. My issue is that the very first rule, you must have a spotter if you're wearing goggles, is pretty much where I would say 90% of FPV flies, if not even higher, fall down on straight away. So it's like, how do we then expect them to come up the other side and follow all the rest of the rules if the first rule is such a barrier for them to be able to enjoy the hobby that they just can't do it? So, we have situations where obviously if it's a sterile and it's a competition and it's a BMFA flying site, and these type of things that you can have one visual observer across the entire area. What are your thoughts as far as being able to have, sterile situations? So you're in a field, there's no one in that field. You have trees that are going up to, 50 meters, whatever, very tall trees. You want to be able to fly FPV with your goggles in that kind of environment, far from people. So in the A3 category, certainly. Yeah. So we're not talking about, a built up park with a football game over there and a cricket game over there and that type of thing. Yeah. We are talking, in the countryside. Do you see an issue with that?
I don't see an issue with that at all, because knowing from the point of view that, how we have these, let's say, flying parks here. So we have the model aircraft parks,
yes,
which are open to anyone to really go and fly. Nice. And we've been doing beyond visual line of sight stuff there as well, actually. So we've been actually, but again, still having NOTAMs in place. But I think that the FPV, I think that they should be allowed to fly, because I would say that the FPV community are very responsible.
100%. Yes.
They,
yes.
the FPV community are very different from the photo drone, because
are you saying they've
really
got two heads or something, or you're like a hunchback?
Well,
No?
I think that they think like they have two heads. They do have two heads. They
Very
have the
good.
normal head. They have the aviation head.
Yeah.
John Copey will be, I'm sure, will be happy when he, that I'm supporting him in that. And actually, I do have a DJI FPV drone. I think I was showing you the other day. I do have a DJI FPV drone, which I haven't flown yet. I got it from Anarchy Labs. They actually gave me their drone to just, go and fly and try, because I really want to go and try it and have the same experience as you. I haven't even flown it yet. Okay. I haven't even got it. I haven't even put the goggles on yet. So I need to go and learn how to do that. So I'm really, and I'm going to have a visual observer on site, obviously yes. do that as well. So I think I'll be able to talk more about that from a point of view of understanding, but certainly from an outsider looking into the FPV community and knowing the FPV community, I think that, and I can see why the FPV community are very much against us as a drone community, because they don't want to be part of that, because there are people flying beyond visual line of sight, and they don't want to be associated with that, and they're getting brought into the same.
There's a whole argument, isn't there, for the FPV and wider RC flying hobby as well. The scale heli people, the fixed wing people, etc., that they were dragged into this mess by camera drone flyers, and I can completely understand that. And it is ironic that perhaps one of the more, and I call them responsible sides of the hobby, from the point of view that they're more responsible because they've built the drone, so they know the drone, they've tested it, etc. There's a lot more steps for them to be able to get their drone and keep their drone in the air than most of us stabilized camera drone flyers. And it's an interesting one, because I think that in my personal opinion, this is only the opinion of Sean Hickey and Geeksvana and none of our sponsors or co-hosts or anybody else like that. But I do think there should be space for us to find a way to allow the FPV hobby to be able to fly without a spotter. That is something that I think should happen. It would have to have all sorts of caveats in place, because of course we also have the situation that when I have flown and with goggles and always with a spotter, there's occasionally been a situation with someone walking in behind me or alongside and that type of thing, that actually I didn't have, because I was engrossed in the flight as well and trying to keep myself from crashing in manual mode. Your situational awareness around you physically does change, and then when you bring the aircraft back towards you, that can be an issue. So and again, I'm not experienced enough in FPV to say what that sterile environment should be. I know that I think it was GMI Visual that said in the chat, in New Zealand they call it shielded operations, and I do wonder if there is something there that we could build on. Because then we would have a situation where we're not we're not saying to the FPV side of the hobby, here's a brick wall. You have to have a spotter. That's it. No spotter. It's an illegal flight. Go away. Then actually we're then bringing that set of responsible, safe flyers, because they're still doing it. They're still doing it. And we don't see the headlines of FPV drone hits lorry, or, FPV, drone does X, Y, Z, and we know when we analyze all of these, often sensationalized news stories on drone flying, etc. We know the types of drones that are flying because a lot of the time they explain in the story what they are, but also for the type of flying. And you don't hear these things about the FPV drones at all.
No, and that's why the FPV community,
arguably, they're flying FPV drones from head height upwards at decent speed. Arguably, you could argue that the contact of an FPV drone with a person could actually be more of a danger, but yet you don't hear the story. So it's obviously a very, very safe part of the hobby. So I'd like to see us find a solution. That would be my dream, is to find a solution and unlock the FPV hobby from that point of view, because then we can bring these guys into the fold a bit more and say, here's all the other rules, etc., which they already follow, and you won't be outlawing a skilled part of the hobby.
Well, this comes, just something that you said earlier on about, as they're building these aircraft, so they have an understanding let's say, the physics, they understand the center of gravity, they understand all the balance between. So when that FPV drone goes up, it's, without sounding over dramatic, but they are very much at one with it. If you know what I mean, they're very much at one with it.
Which I have found when I fly mine, to a surprising degree. It is something that I didn't realize would actually be the case. But when I flew from the very first time, I thought, crikey, I really do feel where that tree is when I'm flying towards it. And, I'm able to be quite accurate with how I'm flying around the tree. And I mean, by the way, I'm not shooting gaps here. I'm flying around the tree like I'm 30 meters around trees still at the moment. I'm not trying to make myself sound like I'm like, hey, look at that gap. I'm going for that gap. Yeah. FPV.
But that's some, the skill of these guys. The skill is just incredible. They can get through small holes and do it. And of course, nobody will come out and go, oh, that's a risk. This is a bad thing. They shouldn't be doing that, because you understand that they know what they're doing. They have the skill level. They've built those drones. They understand the weight ratio. Everything is, but when it comes to the other drones, it's bad. It is bad, and to a certain degree, yes, because you can just go to the shop, buy it, put the battery in, and then put it up in the air, and not have any understanding of aviation, not have any understanding of rules and regulations.
No, that's right.
And still fly. And that's where the danger comes in a sense. So this is why the audience, it would be good for the audience to understand it from that point of view, is that, the hobbyists, those who have built, RCs and all the rest of it, they look at us very badly.
I feel like that gap is starting to close a bit from the point of view that you get a lot of people that will now have a Mini 2 that also build FPV, and you get some of us idiots, camera drone flyers that now fly the DJI FPV drone. I think we're FPV flyers and that type of thing. So I think the groups are coming together more. I think as regulation happens, I think we see kindred spirits in each other as well, from the point of view that we're all part of the same community that want to keep the hobby alive as well, and want to fight unfair regulation, certainly. So I think there is a kindred spirit there as well. But no, I agree with you. Yeah, there is that side, and there are FPV flyers that would never pick up a camera drone, and vice versa, of course. Pre the DJI FPV drone, I was probably on that side of things, to be fair.
Yeah, true.
I'm going to raise another subject now, as we move on to our next topic, which is one which has kind of come up, but I want to talk about it specifically, and I'm going to put you on focus here, and I want to get your opinion on it, Stephen. Okay, I want to put you on the spot. Talking about visual line of sight, and talking about sub 250 gram drones, is there a case that flying a sub 250 gram drone is, conflict aside, is safer and therefore should be more allowable? For instance, and I'm not talking about necessarily taking that drone 3 miles away, but if I'm flying a Mini 2, and I'm in the A3 far from people category, so I'm nowhere near a residential, commercial zone, industrial zone, etc. And I'm flying that drone, and it goes, I don't know, let's say I'm going to pick a distance out of the air, but I don't, I give no weight to that distance, and I fly that drone 3/4 of a mile or a mile away from my location, and I'm on waypoint settings, etc., that type of thing. So, and it being a DJI drone or being a main manufacturer drone, I have a reasonable confidence that it's going to come back. Do you see any kind of justification? Do you see any kind of, just again, personal opinion, as a hobbyist and professional pilot that you are, do you see a world where that could exist?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. And until we have, until we have a UTM in place, I think then I think that once we have software, yes, I could see that happening. Maybe,
yes,
because we would have waypoints. We would have corridors, which would allow us to do that. Because it would be something. you know, I mean, I cannot say, I mean, from my honest point of view, I cannot say yes to that, because I would get crucified if I would say that. There are people here who are lining upside at my door. You
I'm
know,
being a little bit evil.
But to a certain degree, again, you know, thinking about how UTM would work, knowing how UTM would work. And again, I've been involved with this. I've been involved in some of the testing for this, and any drones that would be in the sky that would be a danger, they would, you know, I mean, the police would be able to land your drone. You know, this is something, is, you know, again, that you could say, oh, that's unfair. But then again, if you were flying beyond visual line of sight and there was an incident and there was going to be traffic coming in, your drone would then come back. You know, it would get. Would you be okay? Now, let's put this let's put this question out to the audience. If you were allowed to fly beyond visual line of sight, but if there was an incident where there was a police helicopter coming in, and the authorities knew that your drone was there, and your drone would play a potential risk, but you would not know about it, but you would not know about a helicopter, and they would have the ability to allow your drone to come back home, would that be okay? Would that be something that you would accept for flying beyond visual line of sight?
Okay, be interesting to see what the chat thinks on that one. Yeah,
because I've been involved in tests with that, and actually, you know, I was actually one of the first pilots to be involved in that test, and it worked. It worked perfectly. It worked absolutely perfectly. The drones came back on their own, and they landed in the same places as they took off. I had.
This is one of the things whenever we talk about beyond visual line of sight, and I'm talking to a commercial operator like yourself. I know you are a hobbyist, very much a hobbyist as well, and enjoy the hobby as a hobby, as well as, of course, being a secret agent drone flyer on the commercial side of things. But the whole UTM things, and obviously for anyone that doesn't know, UTM the idea is going to be that it's a unified traffic management system from the point of view that you are going to be able to track everything in the sky. So, you know, the air traffic control are going to know where the drones are. They're going to know where the aircraft is, everything else like that. And everything will work together so that we know what's going on. The idea being that we can have a lot more commercial drones. Obviously, delivery drones can't happen unless, you know, the emergency services helicopter know where those delivery drones are and everything else like that from an insurance point of view. So certainly from, you know, regulated safety point of view, it's never going to happen until then. But my issue is that UTM, I don't know how much of a unlocking capability and how much of an access point of view are they going to give the hobby on that side of things. Well, 100% commercial side, they're going to get lots of beyond the visual line of sight opportunities, as they should, because they're going to put very good safety cases forward. They're going to get NOTAMs in place. They're going to get everything else like that. You know, being able to survey the whole of the Golden Gate Bridge, etc., that type of thing, and you know, of course, being beyond visual line of sight while they're doing that, etc. But I'm only concerned from the point of view that I could see the next stage and UTM and that type of thing, and that kind of beyond visual line of sight, leaving the hobby side of things behind, when actually hobbyists are capable of putting complex flights together and getting permissions and that type of thing. Do you think it's going to be focused too much on the commercial side, or?
Well, you know, I think that the UTMs are being I think that they are being designed for the enterprise, but I don't see the enterprise being up and running as heavy as they would like it to be. Yes. So I think that this is something that could be in place for us, for the hobbyists. And I do call myself a hobbyist here right now, even though I'm a professional, I do all the rest, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking from the hobby side, from my own point of view. Having seen the technology, having experienced that technology, and knowing how it works, because they have identity, they know who you are. They will have your email address, they will have your phone number.
Yes, absolutely.
Will have the ID of your drone. That doesn't mean to say it's a bad thing. It just means to say that you can fly. And then if by chance there is something happening in that airspace, your drone would come back. Therefore, everything would be okay. It does work, and and of course you don't know really what's happened. So I mean, your drone could come back. It could seem like a fault in a sense.
It almost becomes a hierarchy, doesn't it? Essentially. So in this utopia that we're talking about, and UTM's in place, and therefore, because it's in place, it's an app which is included on everyone's smartphone that wants to fly, because you have to go through this smartphone to notify that the flight's going to happen. So yes, it is remote ID and all those other things plus, in fact. But you would then have a situation where if you're flying your Mini 2 and you just go in behind those trees over there and it's beyond visual line of sight, etc., and you're flying your mission, if a commercial drone or an EMS helicopter or something else comes into the area, it would just come back, basically. So rather than notifying you and needing you to do something about it, it just comes back, and obviously you'll potentially get a report afterwards of what happens. No, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So and I think that is a way that we can use technology to allow us to fly beyond visual line of sight safely.
Yes,
and also make everyone else make sure the airspace is safe as well. But our UTMs are the UTM software. All this development has been going on. You have AirMap, you have Altitude Angel, you have Frequentis and stuff, and they've been going around for 3-4 years now, and they will have to put them into place, but there's not going to be drone deliveries happening all the time. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen for a long time. If it does happen, I can't see it happening. So they're going to have that paid for somehow. If you want to fly beyond visual line of sight, would you be willing to pay that little bit extra for that or something? I don't know.
Indeed. It's interesting, and I think it's it's one of those situations where actually I think it's whether or not you end up having to pay to fly and that type of thing, obviously again is another whole can of worms. And,
I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to say obviously what happened with obviously AirMap,
but to have that option, to have that option, if you could join that, one way of being able to fly beyond visual line of sight is that you have to do, you have to join this, you have to do X, Y, Z, and show a certain level of insurance, and yes, you've got to pay for a membership to that app or something. Then personally, I could see a valid point in that, because again, it's not necessarily that I don't want to fly beyond visual line of sight, or I want to fly within visual line of sight. I want to follow the rules to keep the hobby safe, basically. If somebody gave me an opportunity to do that, I could see that could work, frankly. So
and I think also, one thing that that the photo drones and maybe even FPV, what they don't in a sense realize, that from the hobby aviation side, and I'm talking about purely hobby aviation, which falls under likes of gliders and paragliders and parachutists and all the rest of it, it's a very expensive hobby. So what you're being asked to pay, if it's $9 a month, 10 quid a month or something, blah, blah, blah. And people are getting up in arms about this. I say, I shouldn't have to pay this. Well, if you were getting into any other aviation, you would have to have medicals, certificates, checks. It runs into thousands, just the hobby.
As someone who's started purely, I know I have my GVC and stuff now, but I'm still a hobbyist, and someone who very much started as a hobbyist drone flyer. My issue, I suppose, that I raise with that kind of thing is, yes, it's aviation, yes, there's a cost, and yes, there's safety and regulation, and everything you say is 100% valid. My issue with it is that this is a hobby which has been very, very safe, doesn't have particular issues on safety side of things, and to then have to almost, I feel, invent reasons for there to be a cost involved is a dangerous road to go down, because where does that stop? And one of the biggest things that upset me, the fact that Model RC flyers were sort of dragged into the drone code in the same way and have to follow the same rules, is that you're putting hurdles in the way of young people taking up engineering hobbies and that type of thing. Someone in the chat earlier put in that Neil Armstrong used to fly long range model aircraft and that type of thing. And you know, so many people that are in you know, that are famous engineers that have anyone that's often that have written their life stories, etc. They will say that, oh, I used to do this as a youngster, and I used to build model aircraft or, you know, model rockets and that type of thing. And what I fear is that cost, because even something as small as the £9 registration fee in the UK, it's a cost and it's a barrier, and therefore it's a barrier to stopping people entering a hobby. And I don't like barriers, and you know, I would like to see a level of the hobby. And I say left alone from the point of view of, you know, allowed to exist. I don't mean leave it alone, you're picking on it, but I mean that left alone to be the hobby, to be the base hobby that people can take up and that people can enjoy from a very young age, and really get to know how these aircraft work and how, you know, to build an FPV drone, how to fly a camera drone, that type of thing. And I think that needs protecting, certainly. I think that's quite important. But bringing it back to visual line of sight, there is actually a point of the UK drone code which actually does allow beyond visual line of sight. And this is actually in one of my videos called, I think it's 3 Things You Might Not Know About the drone code. And it's actually point 35, which is flying with follow me mode active. And it states that some drones or model aircraft have a follow me mode. That means you can set your aircraft to follow you within a fixed distance, which obviously we all know. You do not have to keep your drone or model aircraft in direct sight when follow me mode is active and set to follow within 50 meters of you. You must still follow all of the other points. So there is actually a way that, you know, from and that's obviously visual line of sight in a different sense. That's visual line of sight in the sense of, you know, it's following you and you're wanting to do some action shots and that type of thing. And what they're saying there is within 50 meters, and it's you know, following all the other parts, so i.e. Article 241, and being safe, of course, that you can have this active, and you know, if it goes behind a tree or something whilst you're doing it, then you're actually okay within 50 meters, which is interesting.
So it's kind of eyes in the back of your head.
Yes.
You know, line of sight.
Yes. So it's
you know,
it's
you
still
know
close.
it's there.
Yeah.
You know it's there. You know, and you know, but of course, you know, that's something which, in a sense, you know, okay, it's good to mention, it's good to discuss it in a sense, but it's not really part of the main discussion in terms of flying your drone far away.
Exactly. But again,
is going to cause an issue.
It's important that visual line of sight is explained properly, and that we know all of the different aspects of it, because it's a topic which is you know, it's one of those trigger topics, frankly, at the moment.
Of course,
and hopefully by the end of this, we'll have all learned a lot of information. So be very interesting. Excellent. Okay, so coming up on Geeksvana, we have got on Geeksvana Live on Wednesday. We've got a bit of a special show coming up, which is actually looking at Mars. So we're certainly talking about a drone being flown beyond visual line of sight with the Mars Ingenuity helicopter. And we're going to be joined for a very special show on Wednesday by Dr. Pascal Lee. We've got a few other bits and pieces and surprises coming up on the show as well, where we're going to be talking and having a look at what the Ingenuity helicopter, the first drone to fly on another planet, has achieved, and really take it apart and look back at all the benchmarks and all the milestones there and what could be next. Dr. Pascal Lee is part of or is the director of the Horton Mars project, which is actually a project up in the high Arctic, where they have a base in the high Arctic, where they're developing technologies, including drone controls, etc., that type of thing, for the first manned missions in the 2030s. So it's going to be very exciting to have him on the channel again and have a chat with him. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that was a great show we had last month when he was on, and again, you know, could have spoke to him for 3 hours, and yeah, I'm looking forward to this show again. Actually,
definitely,
it is really going to be a good one.
So that's on Wednesday night at 9 p.m, and then the shows will then go back to being on Thursday nights, as usual, basically. Thursday nights at 9 o'clock. The following week, I am joined by Claire from Drone Prep, who is actually going to be giving us a walkthrough of their software product, which brings together different things like sort of a drone assisty type service with landowner information and that type of thing. We'll explain it all in the evening. It will all become clear. So that actually means the next time that you're after the Mars Ingenuity live stream, it will be back after your Africa visit, won't it? So you'll be back after Africa for the next visit.
Yes. I reckon I'll be back on after that. I'll be having a week's break or so. But make sure you follow on social media, and because I think I'm going to have some cool things.
And there is a link in the description to Stephen's channel. Please do go along and subscribe. He's approaching that magic 1,000 mark. So it'd be great if we can get in there before he actually reappears, which would be fantastic. And I've noticed that we're both wearing new tops tonight. I have my new Geeksvana polo shirt, which has a much smaller logo on it than my usual T-shirt Geeksvana. You've gone the other way. And you've gone from having the little logo to Flyby Guys.
Yes, I have the big logo, and I also can I show the back?
Yes, let me put the focus on you.
I'll put the one on the back.
Hey,
pilot on it.
I noticed it doesn't say drone pilot, just pilot.
It says pilot. And you can actually buy these T-shirts. We have these for sale. So if you're interested, get in touch, because we have these for sale. You can buy them, and they can be sent anywhere in the world. So
anywhere
you can
in the
have
world.
them say anywhere in the world.
Exclusive Flyby Guys merch. So yes, very cool.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it. I always appreciate it. You're a dedicated servant of the Geeksvana channel. And a welcome co-host. I really do appreciate it.
It's an absolute pleasure, Sean. It was really, really great. I'm going to actually, once we finish up here, I'm going to continue, and I'm going to go and watch those guys in New York.
Excellent. Yes.
On right now. In
fact,
they're live right now.
Started. Yes.
They've already started. Yes. So Lawrence and
it's on Novice Squads tonight, isn't it?
Yes, it's on Novice Squads tonight. Yes.
Excellent. Yes. So everybody pop over and enjoy that show as well. In actual fact, while I'm talking, I will go and grab a link to that show so everybody can pop across there, and then I will just look at me doing this with one hand. There's me thinking I could do it whilst I could talk.
So talented.
Yeah, but I genuinely appreciate your help tonight, because I have been a little bit below the weather, and you've helped.
I know.
You've helped me through it. So yeah, there's a link there, and Smegger's just done it as well. Actually, thank you to the other thing. If everybody goes in there and puts #Geeksvana in the chat, if you are joining from there, so they know that you've just come across from the Geeksvana show, I'd really appreciate it, because they are good guys. We will see you all across there. So that just leaves it for me to really say thank you all for coming. And starting this debate. As I said, there's a few more videos on this particular subject coming up on Geeksvana, which will lead up to a roundtable debate where we'll have commercial people, we'll have hobbyists, we'll have FPV pilots, etc. There, people with different points of view, really looking forward to having that. So we'll see you on Wednesday at 9 p.m. For the Mars Ingenuity helicopter special. Be safe out there, everybody. Fly safe, and see you next time on Geeksvana Live.